Welcome to this edition of Pre-Internet Plane Spotting, brought to you by JetFlix. Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Pre-Internet Plane Spotting. In this episode, we're looking back to the late 1980s. It was the era of Glasnost and Mikhail Gorbachev. It was the era when the Soviet Union transitioned to Russia and the CIS countries. Aeroflot wanted to be known as an airline for all people and all routes and all markets. And they really did have the aircraft to justify and prove that existence. I'm going to be taking you on a tour of what Aeroflot looked like, what their operation looks like, what their aircraft fleet and structure was comprised of at the time of Glasnost in the late 1980s. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this fascinating look at Mother Russia's fabulous airline, Aeroflot, in the late 1980s. I should also add that I'm a collector of 35mm Kodachrome slides of aircraft. So if you have any aircraft slides or collections of aircraft slides that you'd like to sell, please get in contact with me, as I am a cash buyer. The same applies to commercial aircraft models. I'm a huge collector of commercial aircraft models. If you have any travel agent display models for sale or trade, I'd love to hear from you. The Antonov AN-2 Anushka, made of all work, was developed as a multi-purpose aircraft having short takeoff and landing or STOL capability with a payload between 2,000 and 3,000 pounds. Some 18,000 examples of this utility aircraft were built between the late 1940s and the year 2001, with production taking place both in the former Soviet Union and Poland. This aircraft was highly adapted to rugged, non-improved airstrip work and was used both in military and commercial roles. Type was used for many different things, including hopper-equipped versions for crop dusting, scientific versions for atmospheric sampling, water bombing, general transport, military use, float-equipped seaplanes, and light armed combat. Natural replacement for the AN-2 was deemed to be the Let 410. The Let 410 development started in the 1960s in Czechoslovakia by aircraft manufacturer Let Konovice. Soviet airline Aeroflot was looking for a turboprop-powered replacement for the AN-2. Let 410 went into service in 1970 and is still in service today. Some 1,200 examples were actually built, and the type is usually operated as a small regional short-haul airliner. With over 17,000 examples built since 1961, the Mil-8 holds the distinction of being the world's most produced helicopter. The Mil-8 was designed by Mikhail Mil, and it was originally designed as an airborne command post, an armed gunship, and a reconnaissance platform. It's also used for personnel transport, and it's used today in over 50 countries in both civilian and military roles. The Mil-2 helicopter was in production between 1965 and 1998 and was produced in Poland by the PZL company. The Mil-2 has the NATO code name Hoplite. It's a small, lightly armed, turbine-powered transport helicopter that provides close air support, and it can be armed with side rockets and a cannon. Some 5,500 examples have so far been produced, and it can seat 10 passengers. Examples have been used in varying roles, including air ambulance, aerospraying, and crop dusting. The Mil-10 is a heavy lifter. It's an aerial crane, and it has the NATO nickname the Hark. The Mil-10 was produced in very small quantities. Only 55 were built between 1964 and 1969, and several remain active through to today. You might call the Mil-10 an Olympic-class Soviet powerlifter. She can haul 6,000 pounds of cargo under her belly in a sling, along with 28 passengers in the cabin. Or, straight up, she can lift 18,000 pounds. Very impressive for her vintage and capabilities as a classic helicopter. The Kamov Ka-26 is a light utility helicopter. It was in production between 1968 and 1985, and some 816 examples were produced. The helicopter is used primarily for crop dusting and light passenger carrying as well as medevac work. The Mil-26, NATO codename Halo, is a monster airlifter. This helicopter was primarily designed and built for the Russian Air Force as well as Aeroflot. The Mil-26 went into service in 1983, and as of present, some 316 have been built. The Mil-26 can haul 29,000 pounds of amphibious armored personnel carriers, ballistic missiles, and light utility vehicles into unimproved, unpaved airstrips and remote locations. It's also used for cargo lift in the Aeroflot role. This is the Mil-171 helicopter, which is an enhancement of the very popular Mil-8, of which over 11,000 have been produced so far, and they're in service in over 80 countries in both civil and military roles. And the helicopter can transport 26 seated passengers or 12 medical evacuated stretchers. The Kamov 32, or Ka-32, is the civilian version of the Kamov Ka-27 helicopter. It was introduced in 1982. Primary users include the Soviet Navy, Russian Navy, Ukraine Navy, Indian Navy, and of course, Aeroflot. Whilst the type was used in the search and rescue role in the military field, for civilian use, the Ka-32 can be used as a general observation platform and forestry and seismology work. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, when Aeroflot was expanding its operation into international markets, including Europe and Hong Kong, the A310 was deemed to be a suitable aircraft for these long-haul services, and Aeroflot operated the type for several years until other newer types, including wide-bodied 777s, came on strength to replace them. A little over 1,000 Yak-40s were produced between 1967 and 1981, and Aeroflot used the Yak-40 as a short-haul, rugged regional airliner across the vast Soviet Union and post-Glasnost Russia. The straight-wing trijet, or Baby 727, was designed to transport between 20 and 25 passengers. Today, most of the Yak-40s have been retired, although there are still a few stronghold operators with the type remaining in yeoman service. Most of the Yak-40s would have been retired by Aeroflot in the mid-1990s, and as of today, only about 20 Yak-40s remain operational worldwide. The Yak-42 is the follow-on act or big brother to the Yak-40. It first flew in 1975 and went into service in 1980 and was in production until 2003. Some 185 examples were produced, mostly for Aeroflot, and it's capable of carrying 100 to 120 passengers on medium-haul operations. Good old Krusty, the Tupolev Tu-134, was a short to medium haul airliner built by Tupolev. It first flew in 1963 and was in production between 1966 and 1989 with some 854 examples. Most of them were factory delivered to Aeroflot for short to medium haul routes. Most of Aeroflot's Tu-134s would have been retired in the mid to late 1990s, and the type was banned in Europe after 2002 due to noise regulations. As of today, only a handful of airlines still operate the Tu-134 foreign passenger services, and the type is rapidly vanishing from the skies, sadly. And here we have the fabulous Tupolev Tu-154M. It's a highly upgraded version of the original Tu-154, and it entered mass production in 1984. Her uprated engines offered a higher gross weight, and the aircraft was in production up until around 1991-1992. The 154 could comfortably carry 180 passengers on a range of about 5,300 kilometers. It was similar in size and operational capability to the Boeing 727. And here we have a Tu-154A model. Some 1,000 Tupolev 154s were built during the production run, and as of today, there are very few remaining in active service worldwide. The Antonov AN-30 was an adaptation from the Antonov AN-24. It was designed for aerial cartography and hence the bubble nose with the windows up front to provide forward and down visibility for cartographers. The aircraft went into service in about 1971, and only 123 were built up until about 1980. As of today, only a very small number remain operational. Aeroflot would have used the aircraft in the cartography role as well as in the cargo and passenger transport role. And here we have the Antonov AN-26, NATO code name Curl. The AN-26 was an adaptation of the AN-24, and it was designed primarily as a military transport for the Russian or Soviet Air Force, as well as the Pakistan Air Force and the Vietnamese Air Force. The AN-26 could carry about 40 passengers on 500 to 1,000-mile legs, quite similar to the AN-24. But it did also have a rear cargo door and rear ramp so that vehicles and cargo could be easily loaded and transported to unimproved airstrips. Which brings us to the mother of Soviet-designed twin-engine turboprops in the medium transport role, the famous Antonov AN-24. It first flew in 1959 and went into service in 1962. The AN-24 was a 40 to 44-seat turboprop transport. It was operated on short to medium-haul services in remote locations, and between 1959 and 1979, some 1,400 examples were produced. Aeroflot would have retired the type in the mid-1990s, but as of today, there are still roughly 100 in service worldwide, primarily in the CIS and serving in Africa. The AN-12 has the NATO code name Cub and is essentially a baby Hercules. It can transport a payload of 44,000 pounds, which is just a bit less than the 50,000-pound payload of a Herc. The AN-12 was in production between 1957 and 1973, and some 1,248 examples were made. Aeroflot would have used the AN-12 in various cargo roles. It has rear loading cargo door and ramp for easy access of cargo and freight, and the type would have been in operation with Aeroflot through to the mid-1990s. Even today, a good number of AN-12s remain in operation, both with the Russian military and commercial operators in Russia and CIS states. This brings us to the venerable IL-62, which was essentially a 1960s copy of the Vickers VC-10. The IL-62 was in production between 1963 and 1995, and some 292 examples were built, primarily for Aeroflot on domestic long-haul services. The IL-62 remains in service today with just a handful of operators, including Air Koryo, the state airline of the DPRK, as well as some cargo operators and the Russian government. The IL-86 holds the distinction of being the world's second four-engine wide-body jetliner. It was tested and developed by the Aleutian Design Bureau in the 1970s, and it was actually developed during the rule of Leonid Brezhnev. Some 106 examples were manufactured between 1976 and 1991, and the type entered revenue service on December 26, 1980. The largest operator, of course, was Aeroflot. Aeroflot primarily used the IL-86 on medium-haul domestic routes, but it did show up in foreign locations such as London Heathrow and even as far away as Tokyo. The IL-86 was famous for its forward integral air stairs, and it also featured lower-level galley system in the mid-cabin. The IL-86 was unique because they designed the aircraft with a special passenger hand carry storage system whereby passengers would deposit their coats and carry-on baggage into a special storage system that was below deck that they passed through as they boarded through the integral air stairs in the lower section of the forward aircraft. The IL-96 was a shortened, long-ranged, advanced technology development of the IL-86. It featured winglets, a redesigned wing, a glass cockpit, and a fly-by-wire control system. With a maximum passenger capacity of 262, the IL-96 was designed as a long-range transatlantic intercontinental jetliner. Not only did Aeroflot utilize the IL-96, it was also exported to Cuba and was in operation with Cuba up until very recently and has been in and out of service with Cubana over the past few years. Only 30 examples of the IL-96 were produced between 1992 and approximately 2010. Both Istanbul and Tashkent were known to be some of the final destinations served by the Aeroflot IL-96. The final IL-96 flight took place between Moscow, Sheremetyevo, and Tashkent on March the 30th, 2014, marking the end of the era of the IL-96-86 aircraft with Aeroflot. The AN-124 Ruslan was designed by Antonov in the Ukraine and is a heavy transport aircraft with a 150-ton payload capability. Only 55 examples were manufactured between 1982 and 2004, and many of these aircraft remain active today. Aeroflot uses and used the aircraft over much of its operational life, and the aircraft is frequently seen in international destinations providing heavy lift capabilities. The IL-76 is a four-engine jet transport, almost a baby C-141 Starlifter, of which some 960 were manufactured predominantly for the Russian Air Force between 1971 and present day. The aircraft is actually in current-day production, albeit in limited scope. The aircraft was used throughout the former Soviet Union and is currently in operation in large numbers with the Russian Air Force and commercial operators based within Russia and the CIS. The IL-76 has a cargo capacity of 88,000 pounds, and it features a rear-loading cargo door and ramp system. And it perfectly serves the in-between market for cargoes that are not big enough for the huge AN-124 and are too big for Hercules or AN-12 class of aircraft. The opening up brought by Glasnost and Perestroika in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Aeroflot was keen to upgrade its international aircraft with Western state-of-the-art airliners that would increase their brand presence in the international marketplace. This photograph shows one of two 767-300ERs that were leased in from an Irish leasing company in 1994, and Aeroflot would go on to operate a total of 13 767-300ERs up until the early 2000s. The final two 767-300ERs were eventually retired by Aeroflot in 2006, but the type was popular on most of Aeroflot's international routes. This so brings us to an end of our journey looking back at all the various interesting aircraft that were operated by Aeroflot in the late 1980s and early 1990s. You like this video? Please click the thumbs up below. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. Also, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I'd love to see that. I'd like to introduce myself. Hi there, my name is Henry Tenby. I am the creator of JetFlix TV, which is the new aviation superfan streaming service. If you'd like to try JetFlix TV, I have a couple of suggestions for you. In the upper right-hand corner is a pop-out where you can click and you can get the first 30 days free, full access to JetFlix TV, and then it's only $5.99 a month, and I hope that you'll check it out. There's another option as well that's now in the pop-out in the upper right-hand corner where you can save money by subscribing for 6 months or 1 year. So it might be something you might like to check out. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show.